Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturning. The last couple of presentations at our club meeting, we've dived into Barbara Dill's book on eccentric turning, and so we want to do some practical experience with it. We have a Saturday meeting where we're going to get hands-on with it, but I thought I'd give it another go. I've done some a while back where I was doing long, thin things with a wand. Different problem there because they would bend, and I'll pull that one out again and dress it up again. But for now, let's turn this three-way eccentric candlestick. I do have a metal piece on the top for the candle. Don't put a candle in wood without it. And for a counterweight, I have put sand in the bottom with epoxy so that it has a better chance of standing up and not tipping over. So let's turn this eccentric candlestick. I have mounted this piece of what I think is some variety of walnut between centers. The cross section is about 3 by 3. I have mounted it between centers for roughing. It would seem that roughing is not necessary for an eccentric turning, since I will be shifting the turning axis at least 3 times, but it makes sense to remove as much wood as possible while it was still on the primary axis and much more balanced and easier to rough down. The wood is dry. My bowl gouge does a great job of whittling it down. Once round, what do? What do I usually do? Cut a tenon, this time on both ends of the spindle. While technically I could drill the ends later, I think it is best to do it now and on the lathe. Not only does the lathe hold the wood securely, but the holes are exactly on the primary axis and aligned. The holes are 1-inch diameter on both ends. This fits the metal cups that I think are essential on wooden candlesticks. I am not willing to risk the candle burning down and igniting the wood with all that wax. With the holes ready, I'm taking a moment to reduce the diameter just a little bit at the waistline, about 1/3 down from the top. Still easier now rather than later while I'm cutting so much air. Now for some detail work, but not on the lathe. I have marked a diameter on the ends where the new turning axes will be. The tedious task is to divide the circle into thirds, a trial and error process homing in on the 1/3 measure. Unfortunately, I have to do this on both ends. I mark the other end after marking a line down the side and then offsetting by 60 degrees, approximately, for half of a 1/3 twist. One important point to mark is to mark the corresponding points A, B, and C. Just in case, I also marked 1, 2, and 3 lines as a backup. I do not want to be confused later, and that's easy. This is only slightly modified from Barbara Dill's book. Now for the A axis. This is wild turning. With so much air to cut, I nibble at the wood with light, shallow cuts. I also like shear cutting for this work. I have marked the center with pencil since it is easy to confuse my eyes. A tap with a mallet helps to seat the spur drive center. After all, it is only holding on with half its spurs. The only good way to check progress is to stop the lathe. Even then, it is tough to assess. Shifting to the B axis and then double checking the corresponding marks. Again, a couple of taps with a mallet helps to seat the drive center. Increasing the speed helps to reduce the bounce. I'm finding it difficult to hit the waistline with the correct diameter. I am wondering what I can do to help. With the C-axis now in process, I can also compare the width of each flat or facet. Ideally, the width should be equal or at least similar. Fortunately, I can shift back to previous axes to fine-tune the facets. As I examine the turning so far, some facets are pretty skinny. That means I need to take more off on that axis. Fortunately, the target axis is always directly opposite the side that needs more taken off of. Similarly, if I need to take off a bump, same rule applies. The holes are opposite the bump. The problem then is blending into the surface without creating a new problem. Sanding is coming up next. One thing you will probably notice when turning an eccentric piece is that it's hard to get the spindle as smooth as you would normally because you're cutting so much air that it tends to have lines or grooves around. I'm not sure how you avoid that, but as a teenager I spent 3 years in an auto body shop on the paint side where I sanded hundreds of cars. And one of the things we had to do in order to get bumps and such out of cars was to sand the car, but with a block. Now you may be using a flexible sanding pad such as this one. That's all fine and good, but it follows the wood. If you want to get the bumps out, sand your coarse grits with a sanding block. Now it doesn't have to be fancy. I just took a piece of scrap wood and put a flat on it. Then I can easily wrap a small piece of sandpaper around it, sand with the grain to get until the bumps are out through at least 80 and maybe 120 grit. Then I could go back to machine sanding. But if you want to get it smooth without a lot of wavy bumps, use a block and use coarse sandpaper to start with. None of this 220 stuff. Start with 80 and you'll be fine. With the facet sanded, the next task is to trim the top and the bottom. I aim for removing the old tenon and do a gentle convex curve on the top and a concave curve on the bottom. A pair of 1-inch spindles mounted to threaded wood faceplates enables this work on the original axis by fitting into holes in both ends. I could not have used the tenon since the eccentric turning removed critical chunks of wood. Finally, I am applying shellac friction polish without friction. This piece is larger than what I would like for shellac. With the large surface area, the finish can dry and gum up. I will buff this later to perfect the finish. Now looking at this, it's the first one I've done in a while. I think it is a little bit uneven, but what's even about eccentric anyway? I think I can do better. It was hard to measure the centerpiece. It was hard to measure the diameter of this. I think I have a solution for that I want to try out. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I make a new wood turning video and add it to my website. Please wear your full face shield for safety anytime the lathe is running. I will see you next week with another wood turning video. By the way, if you're feeling down, take time to count your blessings. It will help.